I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, we're going to get started. Also, we have a whole bunch of people online as well. I just want to make sure that the people online, if you can respond by chat and say that you can hear me on the chat, just respond and say you can hear me. Dane, it looks good. You can hear me? Okay, good. All right. Welcome to the Spring 23 Speaker Series at the Patel College of Global Sustainability. This is the first event of the semester. This is a huge launch for us. We have some eminent speakers with us who are going to talk and communicate and interact and discuss um, everything that you want to know about sustainability, Tampa Airport, the general aviation airports under Hillsborough County. And they may also talk about some of the projects that we have going on with you folks. So again, welcome. We have Eric Camplin, who's been a friend and colleague for the last couple of years, been working with him on several projects. We have Sarah Banke and Melissa Goldberg here, all from Hillsborough County Airport. And welcome to our series. And I'm just going to pass it on to them. They're going to introduce themselves a little bit more in detail. And they have a brief presentation, and then we'll get into a Q&A session and an interactive session with a lot of you folks, both online as well as folks that are here already.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon. I just want to give a quick introduction. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. We're all going to do our individual introductions via slides, but just want to thank you all for being here and for the opportunity for us to speak and to give you a little bit of kind of formal background. What our goal is today is to give you some background on us, so where we came from and kind of the path we took to get to the positions that we're in. So I'm assuming for a lot of you that might be kind of good information to know, is there a formula to getting these type of positions, which the answer is no, but we're going to at least kind of tell you our path, tell you what our particular positions mean. And then Melissa Solberg is actually going to kind of take the back end of the presentation and really speak further towards change management and what that means for Tampa International Airport, how we've incorporated things like sustainability and really a lot of other changes within the airport responsibly. And then we intend to engage you all. So we definitely hope that you kind of are active with us, when we're asking questions and engaging. We'd really like you to kind of participate and, not be shy. And that's what's going to make today fun. So really looking forward to it. And we'll turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Benke, and actually I want to look at my slides so I can remember what I'm talking about. I am a graduate of USF. I got my humanities degree, my undergrad degree in humanities, and I got my master's degree in the MUMA College of Business, and I had a focus in sustainability. That's because back when I went there, this school was brand spanking new, and I did apply to the first class, but sadly was rejected. But you'll learn in my story that always leads to other opportunities. And I ended up, after many, many different trial and errors, that I'm exactly where I need to be. So, like I said, I graduated undergrad with humanities, but before that, I switched my major 3 times. So it took me a long time to decide where I wanted to be. And I just ended up doing what I really was. So there was a very specific turning point in my career. And I don't know if any of you have been around since Professor Hannah West was a professor here, but she sort of changed my life. I walked into her ethics class, and it ended up being all about business and sustainability and how the things that we do in business affect our environment and the communities in it. And it was mind blowing, and it just lit a fire. And that class required a big project where we needed to pair up with a local business and create a sustainable business plan. And I was working at the courts at the time, and she pushed me to do my own place of business, which I said, no, I am not going to dig in to the court system and find out what they're doing wrong when it comes to sustainability and community outreach and all that. And I refused to do it, but she called me out, and she told me, You would do it because it's the right thing. You should do it because it's the right thing. And I was scared to death, but I did it anyway. And I found out a lot of stuff, in particular, that we were throwing away tons of paper. And I thought, why are we throwing away all this paper? It just seems ridiculous to me. I actually did intel and followed the little lady that pushes the garbage to the dump, and her entire trash can was full of paper, and so was the dumpster. And I thought, if we could just figure out how to save this and use it for something different other than just throwing it away, not only would we be saving trees and doing something good, we would be saving tons of money. That's what sustainability is all about, right? So I did write this business plan, and as a part of that, I decided that I wanted to implement some of it. So I approached the chief judge at the time and asked if I could create a sustainability program. And he looked at me, and wasn't really his thing. He looked at me and he said, "You can do it if you do it for free. If we don't have a budget for it, so if you can figure out how to do an entire program for free, go for it." So I was on a mission, and we started with the recycling. And I reached out. I started at A in under recycling in the phone book, and I called every company, and I reached out to see, okay, can somebody do this for free? Like, I was begging. And one company said, "You know what? If you produce enough paper, it's worth our while. We actually service the federal building too. So it's close by. We won't have to go out of our way." And we ended up partnering on that, and we had more than enough paper that they could take. We had overflow. And turns out we had a judge who was on the board for the Humane Society and said, "You know what? The Humane Society pays $5,000 a year for shredded paper for the puppies in their kennels." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I have so much paper. We could do that." Right? So we partnered with the Humane Society, and we shredded our paper and we brought it to them. And we were finding all these solutions to all these problems. And also for me personally, with a legal background, I thought, well, I want to do sustainability, but how am I going to do it? I don't have a degree per se in sustainability, and I don't have a background in sustainability. So you make your own way. And so by implementing this sustainability program and pushing the limits and doing things that I was afraid of, I was able to create my own path. So there's always a way. Just do what you love, right? So another thing that was challenging for me was after I implemented that program, I was approached by the university to do the commencement speech at my graduation in front of all the master's and doctoral students. And my knee-jerk reaction was, absolutely not. I was petrified of speaking, petrified. And I thought, there's just no way I can do it. But I thought about what I had just accomplished. I thought about what Professor Hannah West told me. I thought about all the things that I had done that were so scary, and I did it. And I don't remember it. It's all a blur, but I did it, and there's video to prove it. So, but that was the beginning of where I am now. So when I walked away from the federal courts, I had nothing. I didn't have a plan. I was a single mom of 2 children. So while all this is going on, I had 2 kids during the process. So, and I was driving, working full time and driving here in rush hour traffic for years, Monday through Thursday. You just, you go after it, right? If you want something, you can do it. So I, I ended up walking away from federal court, not knowing where I was going to go. And a girl that I went to grad school with at MUMA reached out to me and wanted to have dinner just out of the blue. And I told her what I had just done. And she said, "Oh my God, you're crazy. Like, what were you thinking?" I said, "I just couldn't live that way. I will find something. I know it." And then 2 days later, she called me and she said, "Do you want to be my intern in general aviation at Tampa International Airport?" And I said, "Okay, I'm a 35-year-old single mother who's going to accept a part-time internship. Like, that's even more crazy, right?" But I told her, well, I'm not doing anything else anyway, so I might as well. So I interned in GA for 6 months. I wrote all their their strategic marketing plans while I was there. I got the first carbon accreditations with airport carbon accreditation. So I accomplished a lot in my 6 months, but they didn't have anything for me. after that. So I walked away again with my head down. But I got a call a week later from the real estate department at the airport. Someone had given them my resume and they saw my legal background. They said, we need somebody to handle the contracts. So I accepted the job and I managed all the contracts having to do with ground leases and general aviation. And I did that for a year. And the girl that asked me to be her intern in general aviation accepted a position at another airport. And I jumped on it. And so now I am here where she was when I was interning for her. So it's just strange how the universe drops you exactly where you're supposed to be. As long as you stay true to yourself, you work your butt off, and you do stuff that you're passionate about. So I just wanted to share that journey with you, and then share a little bit about what I actually do at the airport. So I just picked some of my very favorite pictures of the things that I've done since I've been there. So I do event planning. Let's see, community outreach. You see, I'll do this all the sustainability objectives with regards to the small GA airports. Anything business related. So business development. There are a lot of conferences. There's a lot of outreach to different businesses. We have events that are related to that, such as like Sun and Fun. I don't know if you've ever been to Sun and Fun. It's the second largest air show in the country, and if you haven't been, you should go. But we have a tent there. We invite all our business partners. There's a lot of behind the scenes negotiations going on. So I help negotiate the ground lease contracts that when people are interested in developing out at our small airports. Yes. Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. So general aviation is basically everything but commercial airline service. So it's everything from gliders to, they're the little pilots that have, their own private airplane that they just kind of play around on. And then we've got like medevac, we've got helicopters, we've got, the missions that go to the Bahamas and bring medical aid. I mean, we do just about everything other than the airlines. So it's very exciting. It's something different every single day. I love my job. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm so happy where I'm at. And it was all by happenstance. But you'll see these people right here in the middle. There are 11 of us, and we manage and operate 3 airports. So you can imagine we're very, very busy. And we love each other, though. We're a very tight-knit family. And then up in the middle there is our 2021 General Aviation Airport of the Year, which is a very prestigious award from FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation. And it was the first time we've ever won that, and I got to write that proposal. So I'm very proud of that. But I'm most proud, I think, at the top right, you'll see Gala. Gala is an event that I kind of stumbled upon, and it's just blown up. It stands for Girls Achieving Leadership in Aviation. It's a celebration of the history of Peter O. Knight and the women in aviation associated with that. But tied to that, the event is, it contributes to a scholarship fund. We raise money for girls who want to pursue aviation. Only 7% of all pilots are female, which is a staggering and very disturbing statistic, but it's true. So we like to help everybody, but we just need to get the girls right now. So that's what we do. And that was something that was my baby last year. We raised $20,000 and just gave it all away. So, so I get to do all that fun stuff. And then right here at the bottom left is one of my tours. And you are all invited. I don't know which of you are able to make it, but yeah. Well, you can't all come, but you're invited. Anyway, we have a blast, and we go to all 3 airports in one day. And I will give you a behind the scenes tour, and we will talk a little bit about the communities surrounding the airports that influence the character and personalities of each airport and the function of each airport, because they all function a little bit differently and for different purposes. It'll be very interesting, but you guys can keep your eyeballs on any of the opportunities you might see for solar. I think that's what your project is, or any other I am like way wide open for any new ideas with regards to sustainability. So please feel free to tell me it all. But that's it. That's my story.
Thank you, Sarah. Really happy, by the way, that you decided to share the element of your story about being single mother with two kids, because I think these first slide that each of us are doing are telling our background stories. And for a lot of you that are getting ready to move into careers or career paths and that kind of unknown, it's good testament that it can happen in any part of your journey. You know, it may not be right away. You may be circling back. You may be resetting. You may have other things on your plate like family, and it can still happen. And now Sarah's a boss of our general aviation airport. So I think it's just a good story to mention. And to me, I'll speak a little bit of my different journey because I've been in kind of the environmental sustainability space for a long time, and my trajectory's been all over the place. So I think a lot of you might be finding yourselves in a similar journey. So hopefully you can see some, guidance and parallel here. I did graduate from Central Florida, which I know is blasphemy to say here. I'm sorry, but I did it. And at that time, there really wasn't sustainability focused, curriculum. There wasn't a sustainability school. UCF did not have a sustainability degree. It was all environmental studies or nothing. And so I had to kind of figure that out. It was in a small interdisciplinary college, not a lot of, hype like we kind of have now, not a lot of support. But fortunately, I was able to find it, knowing that I just saw an industry that was really going to grow, an industry that I was passionate about. And those were kind of my two requirements for what I wanted to go and study. So I got an environmental studies degree from UCF. First year, looking for jobs, couldn't find a thing. And I probably put out, over 100 applications for anything. It didn't matter what, anything that said maybe environmental or anything in the title. Nothing was happening. And then I finally got a call from the Florida Department of Health. And the position was an environmental specialist, which I thought kind of met my criteria, sounded good on paper, score, first job. Ended up being a glorified health inspector. Nothing to do with any of my science background, definitely nothing to do with sustainability. I was going into schools and group homes and very purposeful work, but certainly wasn't kind of what I was looking for. But that's what you have to do. I mean, sometimes you just have to throw a lot of darts at the wall, take that job, keep your eyes forward, see the other opportunities. But sometimes you got to take it and get that experience. And, looking back, it's easier to look back and realize this, but every piece of your experience, you've learned something there. I was not doing what I wanted to do, but what I was doing is going out into the public all the time, sometimes in confrontational experiences, because you're an inspector and it's not always great. And I kind of learned that skill of talking in public and dealing with confrontation and stuff I would have never realized in the moment that I was picking up while I was there. I also I've got two master's degrees. I got one from UF at that time, pretty much an environmental policy way, trying to expand kind of the tools in my toolkit to figure out, how do I move from this environmental scientist position? A couple of years later, I landed really first environmental job was Environmental Protection Commission, Hillsborough County. Some of you may know, actually, I know a couple of people at the Patel College now work there. I know they're doing their grad degree here. Great organization, very environmental protection focused, as in the name. I was particularly in air pollution control. So that's when I started learning more engineering side of things. I didn't really have a whole lot of engineering background, didn't really know much about environmental protection as far as permitting goes and all of that. But I started getting my feet wet in that engineering side. At that same time, I also got my second master's degree in environmental engineering from UF online. So I was doing them both while I was full time. And that was really to expand my, kind of horizons of what my focus was. I really thought engineering and just knowing that background was going to be really practical for what I was doing now or at the time and moving forward, which ended up paying off because between the engineering side and I was starting to work with sustainability, we have a sustainability officer there, and I was kind of her support at the time. I had enough credentials to land the Energy and Sustainability Division Manager for Manatee County. And that's really what started my trajectory into the position now, which I have not even told you. My name's Eric Kaplan. I'm Sustainability and Resilience Program Director for the airport. Have no idea how I was going to get to that path, but then when I landed it in Manatee County, a lot of it was figuring it as you go. My hiring manager kind of knew that, but I think saw that I at least had enough background where I might sink a little bit for the first 6 months and then slowly pick it up, which is eventually what happened. And then I finally, learned how to manage a a sustainability program and started learning that skill and what that meant and kind of being the face for a county as far as that work goes. And from there, that's what led my trajectory. I actually applied for the city of St. Petersburg and this Tampa International Airport position at the same time. Got called from the city first because I think airport, we're a little bit slower in our hiring. I started working for the mayor's office for the city and then got a call from Tampa Airport to get the position I'm in now, which has just been an amazing opportunity and really has kind of elevated my experience in the sustainability and resilience space. So really wanted to give that background because it's been all over the place type of path. I mean, it's been really a roller coaster of different jobs, different experiences. Everything's the butterfly effect. I would have never ended up where I'm at now if it wasn't for each job that I did along the way. And I think that's good to know. I mean, you may have an idea of a position that you really want now. And I think that's a beautiful thing because I didn't even have that idea early on. But it may just not happen in the way that you think it's going to. It may happen in more of a roundabout way. There may be some other jobs that you're not really in love with, but promise you you're gaining a skill from it that's going to be transferable. And then if you keep steady at it and you stay in it, you will end up in that position. It's just everyone's got a different path along the way. So moving into, oh, that's Sarah, my position. So the sustainability and resilience program. I'm the director of this program at Tampa International Airport, or really Hillsborough County Aviation Authority is what we're greater known as. So Sarah mentioned the 3 general aviation airports, Peter O. Knight on Davis Island, Plant City, and then Tampa Executive, which is east of here, I believe. And then we've got Tampa International Airport. And so we're managing the program for all of these airports essentially. And I've kind of broken down the program into these different pillars, one being, of course, our sustainable management plan. Melissa Solberg was actually the very first sustainable manager for the airport. We got a grant around 2014 from the FAA to create a sustainable management plan internally. And once we did that, our CEO thought, you know, we really need somebody to enact this plan. It's great to have a plan, but if you have it sitting on the shelf, you know, what's the good? We didn't have a program. So brought Melissa in to really create the program, achieve the goals within the plan, and really just start the world of sustainability for the airport. And then I've taken over since, and so we're now in the process of updating the sustainable management plan now. And this really includes internal goals like energy goals, water goals, emissions, carbon accreditation, as Sarah mentioned before. We're looking at electrification, which we've been working with Dr. Haldar's classes the last couple of semesters on, all encompassing those type of goals for our internal plans. The resilience part is kind of a new portion of this world, but really important and is really great for the sustainability industry because as we all know, you know, depending on, I hate to say it, but what side you're on and kind of the era that we're in now, sometimes you've got people that hear the word sustainability, they kind of push back maybe immediately. You can't really do that on resilience. Nobody can really refute the need that we have to be resilient no matter if the climate's changing and what the reason might be. We know that it is, and we know we have to figure out how we're going to adjust to that. And it's been really great for the sustainability industry to incorporate that, to really give us a lot more support and focus on the program. So what that means for us in 2019, we created our very first vulnerability assessment. This goal was actually born out of the original sustainable management plan, which I think is testament to Tampa Airport early on. We had a goal to start looking in the resiliency early on. By 2019, we conducted our very first vulnerability assessment, outlined about 7 or 8 different areas that we were perceived to be vulnerable on our campus, including stormwater, electrical infrastructure, heat spots for our staff throughout campus, things of that nature. And we are enacting that plan now, but we have adjusted this work now. Hurricane Ian really kind of changed our trajectory on this path, and we are now looking at our assets, and how they compare to sea level rise and storm surge. So we've updated our models. We know kind of what the campus looks like if a Cat 4 or a Cat 5 hurricane were to hit directly. And we're pretty vulnerable. I think we all know Tampa Bay, it looks pretty bad when you start looking at those models. So we're looking at how to protect our assets, or really maybe how to protect the campus itself from these potential impacts. And so that's really the resilience program. Airport carbon accreditation, Sarah mentioned earlier, is a program that Airports Council International leads really throughout the globe. and where you participate. We were one of the early on airports. I think we were all four of our airports participate. So the three General Aviation and Tampa International Airport, four of about 50 starting off that were even engaged in this work, first and only in Florida. So we're still, I've heard Orlando is getting ready to look into this program, but we're still first and only. And what this program is you're tracking your emissions essentially. Now there are different degrees, but step one, level one is, are you tracking your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions? So what you're emitting on campus or what you're emitting by the energy you're pulling from the grid, scope 1 and scope 2. So level 1, tracking it. As long as you're doing that, great first step. To achieve level 2, you have to track it and create a carbon management plan and show reduction over the years in order to maintain that level 2. Tampa International Airport is currently level 2. Tampa Executive, currently level 2. Our other two GAs are currently level 1, but I think we're getting ready to bump them up to level 2. So all four should be tracking emissions and showing reduction over the years. When you go beyond that, you include scope 3 tracking, which includes airlines, and things get really hefty as far as the tracking goes there. You go to carbon neutrality, where you're buying offsets. It keeps cascading up as you continue to engage. Electrification. So that's a big word now for every campus across the globe, including ours for sure. Everyone's really trying to get away from gas operations, go fully electric. For us, that means a lot of different things. So that could mean transportation. So right now, when you're at the airport, every train you take, whether you're from the main terminal to your airsides or you're going to the rental car center, all electric already. So we've already got kind of big wins there. We've got 4 electric buses on the way that should be delivered in the next month, and a grant application in for 3 more. So we're really trying to expand electric transportation at the airport. About 30% of our internal fleet, our vehicles are electric. Most of those are golf carts. We've got some electric, some alternative fuel, but we are working on a fleet transition plan to kind of, change and at least become more resilient as far as our fleet goes. We mostly run on electric heating too, not a lot of gas heating. We've got a small backup gas boiler at our central utility plant, but really vastly we're on electric heating as well. And we know as we're electrifying, we have to do things like, energy efficiency projects, renewable energy projects, because this electrification world, as great as it is going to increase consumption of energy from the grid greatly. And we have to figure out, how do we mitigate that? So we're looking at things energy efficiency wise. I mentioned our central utility plant, which is highly more efficient. It services our main terminal. We're doing projects like renewable energy siting, solar siting at our campuses now, and just looking at different options as far as mitigating our increased energy consumption over time. Third-party certification. So really that means LEED. We are working on an Envision certification right now, which we're hopeful to get for one of our master plans. But we have our brand new office space, Sky Center 1, is LEED Platinum on the core and shell, which was really a great testament to, I think, the airport and how we value. It's very difficult to get to LEED Platinum. I think Melissa will speak a little bit to that on the change management side of the presentation. But really great accomplishment for our new, and it's pretty stellar office space. And for those who are coming on the tour, you'll be seeing it, and we'll be presenting to you in it. We are working on internal floor certifications too. So the airport makes up floors 3 through 5 in Sky Center. Hopefully we're going to achieve maybe a LEED Gold. We'll see for that certification. And we're going to continue focus on third-party certifications when it's necessary. Not every project is going to be applicable, but maybe most of you have heard we're going to have the new Airside D coming through, which will be our new international terminal. That will be LEED certified in some way. We're not sure what, but in some way. And then, as Sarah mentioned, we just have focus on community initiatives. I mean, we partner with Sustainity Foundation. I know a few of you have volunteered with them. We support their annual award ceremony that we won this year. And just, partnerships with USF, like we're continuing to grow, and other nonprofits that come to the airport. We really try to keep that community focus in mind and just be kind of the big player that we are and the big community supporter that we are, and just know that, we all love Tampa Bay, and we all want to be, stewards, focus on community efforts as well. And so that's the program, and I will pass it over to Melissa.
Actually me up there. So how's everybody doing? I know we've had a lot of information coming at you in the last 30 minutes or so. I'm seeing some head nods. Everybody's still here. Thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. So as you can see, my name is Melissa Solberg. I am the Senior Manager for the Office of Innovation at Tampa International Airport. So I wanted to share a little bit about my journey, unique, how we got to where we are. It's different than anybody that's been up here, and it's going to be just like your journey will be different as well. But my background, I'll kind of start on the left-hand side. I am a graduate of Michigan State University, so Sparty on. My undergraduate degree is actually in interior design. My graduate degree is in architecture, so I have a master's of architecture from the Illinois Institute of Technology. I went to school back in the late 1990s. And so basically, though, I still have about 20 plus years of sustainability experience under my belt. So the interesting thing, when I went to school, sustainability just wasn't common. The term wasn't common. My first experience in trying to understand a little bit more about sustainability in the classroom environment was taking some graduate level classes and talking about putting some green space on your site plan. And that was really kind of the extent of sustainability at that time. My first internship coming out of grad school was at a large architecture firm in Chicago. And it really was just happenstance. So there's a handful of us, 5 or 6. We walked in on the first day and they broke everybody up into different areas. And I happened to be placed with a woman who was just starting their environmental department within the architecture firm. So I spent an entire summer researching LEED, pilot version 1.0, and went through that process over the summer. I moved back to, I'm a native Michigander, moved back to Michigan from Chicago. And when I was interviewing for my first job, it was actually at Ford Motor Company. And it was for Ford Land, which is the real estate facilities and development arm of Ford Motor Company. And we managed commercial facilities, manufacturing facilities, dealerships, corporate office space. And during that interview process, one of the questions was, hey, have you heard of LEED? And I'm thinking, I'm like a day ahead of you on this. But yes, of course I have. Absolutely. What do you need to know? And so that was really kind of the pivot point. So while I was at Ford Motor Company, while sustainability was never my primary focus, I became that niche person, that go-to. And Ford, believe it or not, had, I think, 5 different LEED projects. And they had one of the first 10 that were certified in the country. And it was the Premier Automotive Group North American headquarters out in Irvine, California. The Detroit Lions training facility is also LEED certified. That was a project that I worked on. And over the course of my career, I was at Ford Motor Company for 7 or 8 years. We talk about family and how that impacts us as we're going through this process. I left Ford when my daughter was going into kindergarten because I wanted to be able to be at home when she got off the bus. And my son is 2 years younger. They are probably your age now, so it's been a little while. But that was important to me. Family was important. My job was important. And I had developed enough experience at Ford working on LEED projects that I started my own consulting firm. And I did that for about 7 or 8 years when the kids were younger. And fast forward to Sky Center that Eric's talking about, and our office space within Sky Center. Those are the 29th and 30th LEED projects that I've been heavily involved in over the course of my 20 plus years working in sustainability. So as my lead, so I guess that's kind of in the middle, USGBC, it was actually the Mantis Group was the name of my company, but focused on LEED certification. And then back in 2015, had moved down to Florida. And at that time as well, Eric talked about looking for job descriptions that just had the word environment in them. And, same thing for me at that time. There wasn't a lot of positions that were fully dedicated to sustainability and sustainable practices. And I happened to come across the one at the airport. And I remember going through the interview process. And one of the first things that they said is, how are you with public speaking? I'm fantastic. Not a problem. Terrified. Part of the reason that I enjoyed the LEED certification so much is that the woman that I had partnered with, she did all the business development. She did all the forward-facing, client contact, and I didn't have to do any of that. I could focus on the work. I could be in the background. And so when that question came up, I just flat out lied, and it worked, and that was okay. So it's been a phenomenal experience. It was the first, it was a new position at the airport. Like Eric mentioned, I was the sustainability manager. So he had talked about the FAA got a grant from the FAA to develop this plan. We had a third-party consultant, Mercando and Associates, that did that for us. And then I was hired in to come in and to implement that plan. And so over the last 8 or so years at the airport, it's been a pretty unique journey. came into the planning and development department, which is where Eric is housed in his current position. And while we were talking about sustainability and bringing about awareness, the airport, while we were ahead of many airports across the US, collectively, just where we were to maybe peer industries, we were still kind of catching up, I would say, collectively on what that meant to us and was it really important? And it was, but there was a lot of just kind of gently, knowing your audience and pushing the envelope when you needed to. So in bringing about awareness for the program and the importance of sustainability and whatnot, was able to grow that. We initially, went with the 3 Ps, the people, planet, prosperity. And in talking about what that meant, sustainability is more than recycling. That was literally one of my opening talking points as I'm going through the different departments and talking about sustainability and what that meant. And so was able to grow that program, bring about some more awarenesses to the social side of sustainability. What does that mean for our humans as resources? We're looking at our natural resources, we're looking at our financial resources. What are we doing for the people side? What are we doing for community connectivity? And so from that, moved out of planning and development into, believe it or not, the HR department. So as an introvert, that was weird collectively anyway. But looking at our existing wellness program and what did that mean for the employee experience? And so it was very traditional. We're a government organization. We had Weight Watchers, we had smoking cessation. When our CEO came on board, we started doing a wellness reimbursement for employees that was focused on the physical side of wellness. So we'll cover your gym membership up to $250 a year. And so as I moved in, that was back in 2018 when I moved into HR. So pulled sustainability with me for a while in kind of on the Eric side of the house until he came on board, but was really able to grow the sustainability program and kind of hand that off, and then grow the employee wellness and experience program and hand that off. So what we did when we're bringing about awareness for what is overall employee well-being and what does that really mean, we put some structure around it. So it's not just going to the gym and being physically fit, but it goes back to that same process. Like it's not just recycling, it's more than that. So it's not just physical fitness, it's more than that. And putting a process and a framework around that program, developing the program. So from an employee experience side, from well-being, we look at 5 different elements. We look at your career well-being, we look at your financial, your physical, your social well-being, and we look at our community well-being. So there are 5 different pillars of that wellness program that over the last few years, we've been able to supplement with programs at the authority and grew that into something that we've now handed off to someone else in the HR department. So I guess that kind of gets me to my next slide. I just want to be conscious of it. So right now I am managing and developing an innovation program. So the secret to success is do what we did with sustainability, do what we did with wellness, bring about awareness. What is innovation? What does that mean to us as an organization? And before I do that, I do want to go back. So I want to make one comment on the picture that you see up there in the airplane picture. We're talking a lot about education and the importance of education and figuring out what we want to do. But we've also heard Eric and Sarah talk a lot about passion. And I wanted to bring that up as well. So that picture is actually, that's my grandfather. It's 1931. He is sitting in an engine, in an airplane that he built out of an inverted Model T engine. It flew, which is fantastic. That's his friend Magnus, that's up by the propeller. He had a 10th grade education. And he ended up helping to build and develop Ford Aviation coming out of Brazil. And he was a mechanic for Henry Ford II on his aircraft. And so while education is certainly important, and we're all so privileged to be able to be here and have that experience, your passion and finding something that you're good at is equally as important in my book. So I just wanted to touch on that before I go back. Okay, so the Office of Innovation. So rewind pre-pandemic, if everybody can remember what life was like back then. And for us at the airport, we were thinking about who do we want to be as an organization and where are we going? We knew that we had these new office buildings coming online, that we would be coming from all over the airport campus and moving into this new phenomenal space. We're looking to attract and retain talent. All of these things are coming together. And it's like, well, how's that going to happen? So my executive vice president, who has a unique mix of people, it is IT, it is human resources, it's risk, it's our records information, so central records, and also business diversity and legal. So a wide variety of things came and said, you know what, I'm hearing that there are some airports out there that have a department that is 100% dedicated to innovation. So go make that happen. And that was about the extent of the direction that I had at that time. And so in thinking about, well, what does this mean? It's not just technology. Innovation is not just technology. Technology is an output and it's a solution. We started thinking about innovation when I'm benchmarking other airports. They were very focused on technology. We started focusing on the human side. And what does that mean for us as an organization? And how do we develop a culture of innovation? So for us, innovation is just part of the DNA at the airport. So when you go to the airport and you've got this hub and spoke concept that was innovative at its time, the shuttle systems that take you from the main terminal out to your airsides, we did that before Disney. So for us, innovation is just kind of who we are and what we do. So how do we ingrain that into our existing culture? And how do we make sure that as we're moving forward, we're always thinking about innovation? So the first thing is like, how do you define that? What does innovation even mean? So for us, we describe it as something new or something different that adds value. That's it. It's that simple. When you use the word innovation, you can lose your audience. So fun fact, always know your audience when you're talking about new topics, whether it's innovation or sustainability or resilience or whatever that happens to be. Make sure that you know who you're talking to so that you can have a good conversation back and forth. You don't want to talk at people. So the Office of Innovation, you go through the process of developing it, like who are we, what do we want to do? So the vision is to really just foster innovation that results in some forward-thinking, transformative practices and initiatives. It's a lot of words that basically means we always want to be thinking of things to help us do better, that help us accomplish what we need to accomplish. It can be something small like a process improvement. It could be, from paper to DocuSign is an example. It could be something that is big and sexy like Sky Center, which is where we're working right now. So innovation and process improvement, they go hand in hand, but it could be something big, it could be something small. So really what I do, I'm a department of one, and I act as a facilitator and a connector of resources. So using the relationships that I've built over the last 8 or so years at the airport, I remember when Sarah got there, I remember going through the hiring process with Eric, and we work together now. So using all of the people that I know and the relationships that I've built over time, listening to ideas that are coming in and then making those connections. There's another innovation group at another airport, and it's coming out of Portland. And if you had to, the question was, if you had to describe what you do every day, what would that be? And he had this great answer. He says, I do everything and I do nothing and anything in between. And I think the hard thing with innovation is, and especially coming out of like the planning and development world, which is very process-based, and you have a deliverable, you have something tangible that you see, create it, you build it, it exists, you check the box, you can move on to the next thing. That's not always the case with innovation. So from my perspective, I'm just fortunate that my EVP gives direction and guidance, like make sure you're giving yourself time to think. Make sure that you're not overscheduling and trying to do too much just to deliver, because sometimes that creativity comes to you when you just have a moment of downtime. So that's some important and good advice as well. We'll just kind of move on to the next one. So collectively, the Office of Innovation, right? When you're thinking of new programs, you've got to give it a little bit of a structure. You've got to give it a tagline. So for us, it's engage, innovate, and transform. And those are actually very purposeful in thought. The foundation of everything that we do as we're looking at building this culture, enhancing this culture of innovation at the airport is employee engagement. And it happens at the individual level and it grows beyond that. Without engaged employees, they're not going to bring forward good ideas. If you don't have any ideas, there's nothing you can do to transform. So the heart of this entire program, the foundation, is employee engagement. So I partner with our human resources department. It's everything from the moment you start the interview process to the day you retire or move on to something different. It is learning and development. It is employee events. It is everything that you do that makes you feel part of something just bigger than yourself. So all of those different initiatives that fall under that, the wellness program as an example, all of the different employee activities that we have, happy hour, virtual happy hours during the pandemic, all of those things fall under engagement. So when you have a strong, engaged workforce, you have people that want to share their ideas. So the innovate component is gathering those ideas, building partnerships. It could be internal partnerships. It could be external partnerships, just like what we're doing here. All of those things lead to new and different ideas where change comes into this. Anything new or different, anything innovative is a change. It's something different from what you're doing now and a different result moving forward. And when you talk about the transform component, there's two things associated with that. It's a process of continuous improvement, which you're probably, I see some heads nodding, so you're familiar with that. It's the plan, do, check, act model. And it's change management. So for me, the kind of epitome of all of this coming together was in the fall of 2019. I actually went to a training session out in Orlando for a week on change management. So just quick show of hands, who thinks they can define what change management is? Besides the obvious. Right. It's I'll call it a new and up and coming field. And you just switch to the next slide. Get past that because you'll see that next week. I already went through engage, innovate, transform. I'm ahead of you. Change management. Okay, the tagline, it's the people side of change. Change happens at the individual level. So individual change leads to organizational change, leads to community change. If it's not happening with one person, it's not going to happen in the collective. And so this particular change management methodology that we use at the airport is called ProSci. So it's up there in the corner. I'm not telling you anything that is, the Melissa version of that. This is tried and true, data driven. It is one of the most, I would call influential trainings that I ever went through, because it really gives you perspective on how to implement something that feels impossible. So if you think back to the early days of your work at the courthouse and thinking about, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with all of this paper? This is what helps you do that. And it's not just change at work, it can be change in your personal life. If you got kids and they need to eat veggies, you can apply the same methodology. So I'll just pause for a second and any questions before I kind of transition into how I got here? We'll start talking a little bit more about change. Next 9 minutes. So I guess the caveat there, we're always available to talk to. Yep. Put it into context. Yep, absolutely. And I think this is the perfect way to think about it. Any change, you're in a current state, you're in this really uncomfortable transition state, and then you're in the future state. So when you're thinking about change and it's your change and you're heavily involved, you're living in the future state. So to you, it's like, well, we're here. This is what's going to happen. Like, why doesn't everybody understand? How come they're not on board? Most people don't live where you live with that change. They are in their current state because it's comfortable and they don't have to do anything different and it's familiar and they know what that is. Transition is really uncomfortable. You're not quite sure what's going to happen. Maybe you want to get to your future state. So in your mind, start thinking about projects or something that you're working on, whether it's a school project or a community project that you're involved in. Think about what that change is as we start talking about this next component. All right, this particular methodology for ProSci is called ADKAR, and there's 5 steps. And this is so helpful in life. So just start with that. The very first thing that you have to do is bring about awareness for the change. For example, you want people to recycle. How do they even know that that's what they're supposed to do? What type of communication platforms do you have? What type of signage? Who are your stakeholders? Who's involved in the process? Who are your champions of change? You have to start thinking about this in a much more holistic manner. Not just like, I really, really want it to happen, because you can hope all you want, but without an actual process to follow, it's going to be tricky. Now, some people actually have just an innate ability to do this, to bring about the awareness, to talk about it, to have a passion for it, to seek out people that support the change, to have them be the champions of change. Sometimes you're just doing it and you don't quite realize it, but this will help you give you some context. So awareness for the change. So things that you need to think about: what is the nature of it? Why is this change even needed? And what's the risk of not changing? Those are really good talking points when you are trying to share with people what you want your change to be. The desire is typically the first barrier point that you're going to run into. So you can talk as much as you want about the awareness for it and why it's important and what happens if we don't change. Most people need to know what's in it for them. And once you can get them past that, you can move on to the next steps. So when you look at these 5 different things, so it's awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So one example I can give you, let's say you want to learn how to play golf. You're aware of it, you know the change, you think maybe there's some good things that can happen, it's a new skill, I know what I need to do. The awareness part isn't really that much of a barrier for you. And think about barriers as a scale of 1 to 5, right? 1 being it's the most difficult and you can't get past it, and 5 being like, yeah, I got that. So I want to learn to play golf. Okay, give myself a 5. No problem. Don't need to focus on that. The desire to participate and support the change. I already know I want to, so that desire is not too bad. If you're thinking about recycling, or if you're I think one of the examples that we had was you want all city or county buildings to be LEED certified. You can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but until your stakeholders have bought into that and understand what's in it for them, you're not going to be able to move past it. The third thing is the knowledge on how to change. So if you go back to the golf example, I have now read the rule book. I know what all the rules are for golf. Not a problem. I can recite them. I understand, what your tee time, the putting, all of that. No problem. I have the knowledge. The ability factor becomes a little bit tricky. Some people don't have the ability to actually do that. So what are the things that you have to do to help people gain that competency in what they're doing? So if I'm learning how to play golf and I'm struggling with ability, I think I might need some lessons. I think I might need to practice. I think I might need to dedicate some time. I think I might need to go out with others, play a couple of rounds, go putt, whatever it happens to be. And then the reinforcement factor. If you have the awareness, the desire, the knowledge, the ability, fantastic. If you do it once and it stinks, you're not going to sustain that change over time. So what are the things that you can do to reinforce that change? So are you, things that we do at work. So if we've got somebody who's participating in a program, we're going to celebrate that person. We're going to celebrate their accomplishments. We're going to share that. We're going to communicate that. We've got a TPA TV platform that we use to communicate across the organization. We're going to highlight that person. We're going to highlight their involvement in the change, their accomplishments. So it goes back to that cycle of continuous improvement. So if you can do these 5 things and you can continue to reinforce that, then you're going to be successful in what you do. So I'm going to pause for a second because I know it's a lot of information, but literally the secret to life is up on the screen. That's all you need to know. Perfect. We're good. We're all set. I talked a little bit about the barrier points. When you're thinking about those 5 things, and we can share the slide deck with everybody, and I'm happy to always have a one-on-one conversation. I know this is a lot of information. The barrier point is really, if you're giving yourself a 3, you got to focus in on that effort. And so depending on where you are in that EDCAR process, you're going to maybe develop a more robust communications plan. You're going to go seek out sponsors. You're going to understand your stakeholders. You're going to seek out people who are resistant to the change and develop a resistance management plan. Sometimes the most effective champions of change are those that are digging their heels in, because when you can get them on board, everybody else comes on board. So it's not just those that support it right from the get-go. It's those that are like, not interested. At the authority, we have about 650 employees. We have about 10,000 that work at the airport on a daily basis, whether it's retailers, concessionaires, airline employees. For us, it's about 650. We do. When you're going through, how do you rate yourself the 1 to 5? Fully understanding it, choosing to support. I would say I guess the 2 people that you want to look out for, and I touched on a little bit, find the champion of change who supports your efforts, who has a strong influence across your organization or your community or whatever it is that you're looking for. Because when you have somebody that is a strong influencer and they can support your change, your opportunity for success will skyrocket. When you have somebody who doesn't support the change and they're still influential, you're in for a ride. So you got to make sure that you find that person that can both champion it. And then here's the flip side of that. You can find somebody that loves they can't wait to participate, but they're not going to influence anybody. And so while you can certainly appreciate their support, and that's going to be your go-to person when you're having a bad day, look for those people that can influence those around you. Ensure that you have an executive sponsor, somebody at the highest level that supports what you're doing. That executive sponsor, it's an ABC factor. They need to be active and visible. They need to build a coalition. They need to be talking to their peers. So you want to support them with talking points, with making sure that they have this comprehensive understanding of what that change is, because they need to communicate that. That's the C. They need to be active and visible. They need to build a coalition, and they need to communicate. 5 to 7 times at least, you need to share your change message for any of it to take root. communications plans, understanding your stakeholders.
It was a volunteer-based recycling program. Everybody was assigned to a bin. They had to push it down and take their own recycling down. Well, Chief took his own bin down, and he was on the top floor, and he had to come down, through the elevator and across the entire lobby to get out to the back where all the dumpsters were, and everybody saw him. And everybody wanted to be on his good side, so everybody wanted to be a part of it, right? And so my program's still going without me right now because he's still there and he's such an advocate. But it's so true. When you have somebody in leadership.
Another example of that is moving into our new office building. One of the changes that we had is at your individual workstation, your office, or in a conference room, we no longer had recycle bins or garbage cans. You had to physically get up from wherever you were, walk to a more common area where there was just a collection point. And that was putting people over the edge. So I will tell you, our executive team, even maybe not so much on board. We moved in that first week. I was leaving the building late. I'm driving by and I see one of our EVPs unloading a trash bin from the old office building to take it inside. I'm like, wait, tricky. However, over time, our CEO said to his team, this is what we're doing. So you've got executive sponsorship. You now are building the coalition, and they are out and about, walking around the office space, talking to employees, asking them, hey, how's it going? I know this is different. This is a change. We're not used to this. What are your thoughts? Good, bad, or indifferent? So collectively, when you're thinking about organizational change, you want to give it 4 to 6 months before you do anything different. So within the first 24 hours, they're already bringing in their recycle bin from the other location. They're already looking like, how can I bring something from home and shove it under my desk so nobody will see it? We talked about building buy-in. We analyzed the number of bin liners that you would need on a regular basis. There was 625 of them every day that would have to be replaced throughout all of our office spaces. From an environmental perspective, that's creating awareness, helping people understand what's in it for them. Like, oh, I don't want to pollute that much, right? Giving them the knowledge and the ability, like this is where our common area recycling is. This is why it's important to get up. Pest control. It's better for you for movement, for collaboration. We're just coming back from the pandemic. It's nice to run into somebody that maybe you haven't seen in a while. You're not going to run into them on Teams. You're not going to run into them if you're not getting up from your desk. Also, just don't eat it at your desk. Explore this beautiful office space that we have. Your computer works everywhere. You're connected. You've got a cell phone. You don't actually have to sit at your desk. Go sit someplace else. So all of these things, creating that awareness, creating that buy-in, giving people the knowledge that they can work in other places, they can get up, they can go, giving them, the ability to do that, and then just constantly reinforcing that change over time. Best practices, you can take a screenshot of that one too. Again, just flexible, high-level change management plan, thinking about what you want to deliver, what do you need from the people around you, designate and educate a change management team, find those champions that can help support you in your endeavors, coordinating change management and project management plans. Project management, most people are pretty good at. You kind of know what you need to do, but when you introduce that element of the people side, it starts to get a little bit complicated. So have those two things merge and come together. Look at some of your different milestones and maybe what you need to do on the people side of change to help support your project implementation. Identifying those stakeholders, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the communications plan. How are you going to share information with people? Are you giving a feedback loop possibility so that they can share their thoughts with you as well? So that's equally as important. Analyzing your organizational or your community climate, what their reaction is, document common risk areas, areas of resistance. There's something called change saturation. And for us, that happened. We're moving into this office building. We're coming back from the pandemic. We have no garbage pails to throw our things away. We went from dedicated seating to shared seating, from 40% of our workforce in offices to 15% of our workforce in offices. All of these things are different. And the recycle bins and the garbage can were kind of the tipping point that just pushed people over the edge. But it's real and it happened. And then identifying solicit support from the sponsors of change, and that's at the highest levels. Make sure that you're helping them understand what they need to do to help you be successful. Sure.
right. So one question is, do you all ask or suggest the airlines that use Tampa Airport to invest in sustainability measures? For example, sustainable foodware or minimal packaging on planes? Or how best can you all encourage commercial airlines to work towards sustainability?
Yes and no. For us, so we look at things in two different capacities. We look at that internally for ourselves and for our operations just as an organization, right? Hillsborough County Aviation Authority. And then we also look at that from a third party perspective. So for us, the things that we can control, janitorial services, recycling, those things are things that we can manage and that we can dictate in our contracts. With the airlines, they're all going to have their own sustainability program and their own priorities. So by partnering with them or better understanding what they are trying to do, an example would be in-flight recycling. We offered on our end as a destination recycling opportunities for airlines that are coming in. They've got aircraft full of whatever it happens to be, and we gave them the opportunity to recycle those items when they landed. So that went on for a little while. I don't know that it's still in place. You're shaking your head on.
Unfortunately, that's not still in place. And the issue with that one was, with the airlines, they're going from different airports all day long. So if you got an airport that's ready to receive your recycling, great, beautiful, they're ready to go. But say they leave Tampa and they end up, somewhere, in another state, and they're not ready to collect. These airlines now have to keep the waste on board to the next spot. And unfortunately, all airports just were not on board in order to facilitate that, and they kind of got rid of that, unfortunately. To the airlines piece, kind of like what Melissa said, the answer is yes and no. But one thing we can do, and what I'm hoping to do in the future on the sustainability side, is we do have meetings with the airlines. We have network and collaboration, and one thing I'm facilitating is to get out in front of them and let them know about our sustainability program and our sustainability plan. Because we certainly need the airlines as far as Tampa International Airport is concerned, but they need us as well. And certainly Tampa Bay is a really good market for an airline to be. So in order to be someone who's doing business with Tampa International Airport, it would be good business to fall in line with our values. And if we value sustainability, so should they. And yeah, I'll tell you, just like the airports, the airlines are really getting on board with sustainability. I hear a lot of them at different conferences about sustainable aviation fuel, things that they're doing. So they're both are really parallel, but we don't get to mandate, but we certainly can show our values and encourage in that creative way.
So I did have a question because you guys talk about how you're getting certified and like all these different things, right? Like how you wrote the plan and like you got certified and stuff. What is the motivation behind that? Is it like federal credits or, besides like the ethical sustainability point of view, what is really the business motivation behind it?
The business, there's a lot of different aspects. Actually, kind of follows up on the change management piece of kind of knowing your audience, because we could all speak sustainability all day long and we'd all be on the same page, and not everyone thinks that way. And a lot of people think, in dollar savings. But for instance, LEED certified building, there is a certain percentage of energy savings, which equates to a financial gain. Certain amount of water savings, actually quite a bit, that translates to financial gain. So I always try to tell that story is that they're not mutually exclusive. It's all combined. You have a financial gain looking at sustainability, but you're looking at, those triple bottom line, as we like to say. And if you're an organization that cares about it, then you do it. And so there's social impacts. LEED certified building has recycled material, a lot of them locally sourced as well. Looking at different minority-owned businesses that are involved, all of those community aspects as far as the certification goes as well is part of that kind of triple bottom line. So there's financial gain, there's environmental gain, there's social gain. And if you've got a CEO like we do who does buy in, who supports all of this, it's a no-brainer. And, to be honest, there's a PR aspect to it. We're LEED Platinum building. people want to come tour it, people want to come see it. It's going to influence other buildings to achieve the same criteria, and so there's that aspect as well.
One thing to add to that, when I first started back in 2015, we looked at an internal program of rating our own facilities based on our own criteria, loosely based off of LEED and whatnot, but going through and assigning like 1, 2, or 3 leaves and what does that look like? And I think for us, the third party verification is something that is not just us saying that we did a good job. And so I think that that's one of the aspects I tried real hard to not implement that program because us saying that we're good doesn't matter. But the PR aspect that Eric mentioned as well, there is a little bit of friendly competition to be the first LEED Platinum core and shell building and to, fingers crossed, be the first LEED Gold commercial office located in a Platinum building in the Tampa Bay area. There's some bragging rights associated with that for sure.
Hi. Thank you so much for your presentation. It reminds me part of my journey as well. I used to be a former student here at Patel College of Global Sustainability, and I want to ask you, do you see in the nearest future, or you have in your sustainability management plan, any opportunity of partnership with the hospitality industry?
Yeah, great question. 100% yes. I mean, there's a lot of hospitality industry on the airport campus itself. So similar to the example I gave with the airlines, we have that same kind of influence with our hospitality partners. We can look externally, but if we're just looking internally, which I think we probably should focus on first, because we do have some room for improvement there. We put a lot of focus into who we choose in a hospitality sense. If you go around the restaurant or the airport, a lot of the restaurants are local, things you recognize, true to Tampa Bay. We try to have that focus, but again, in order to do business there, you do want to kind of appease who you're renting space from and who the organization is and what our values are. And that can be a lot of different things. And waste management, certainly one, energy is another. The waste management part for the airport is the biggest when it comes to hospitality. The biggest gap that we have, and I think room for improvement that we can collaborate on. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. And we get partners from the outside wanting to do different things, whether it's Brick Street Farms that wants to kind of show up and show what they do on campus. We get those requests quite a bit. We've got more land to develop, which will bring more hospitality partners in future decades. And so there's going to be a strong focus, I think, on sustainability when we choose who we decide to do business with. But again, we can't go to a restaurant and mandate something currently, but we certainly can highly influence them.
Another thing to think about too, so phase 1 of the master plan at the airport included redeveloping about 70 different concessionaire spaces. And so we went previously from a master concessionaire who was responsible for all of the retail and food and beverage at the airport to having multiple contracts that were responsible for smaller pockets as well. So as we were going through that process back in 2013, 2014, 2015, along the same timeline that the sustainable management plan was being developed, at that time, they had enough foresight to include, so remember when I said we had this little internal system that we were going to use, they gave a lot of that criteria to those concessionaires when they were building out that space. It was kind of like LEED light, we'll call it. What we didn't have in place at the time, because the SMP wasn't finalized, is we didn't have the contractual opportunity to mandate that they do that. It was strongly suggested, and we had partners who did implement, but we didn't really have a mechanism in place for tracking that or for saying, you know what, we're not actually going to pay until you do X, Y, and Z. And because we redevelop those concessionaires more infrequently, I think the next upcoming wave will be, and especially at Airside D, will be an opportunity to include some more specific requirements from a sustainability perspective.
I say I was recently on a procurement committee, and although it's not something that we require when deciding who we accept, it was a commercial real estate consultant agency procurement, and sustainability was something again that's very valued in our organization. And each of the companies had a large portion of their presentation on what they do in sustainability, and it did weigh heavily on who was chosen. So although we don't have, mandates such as that, but like we explained, we tend to lean towards companies that value the same things that we do. So that's kind of how we steer that. So there is a process. And I know that you said that there isn't a particular checklist for procurement at the time, at like this time, but it may be in the future. Cool.
So what sustainability strategy that you're currently working on? It's not on your list for now, but you plan for a future, and what strategy do you think it's difficult to achieve? Airline industry and
Oh yeah,
aviation.
yeah, sure. Yeah, that kind of leads. One thing I wanted to do was follow up on the change management topics Melissa spoke to, and I think there were two big points. One was, high buy-in from leadership is key, which thankfully for us, our CEO, we have it. But I see a lot of probably future sustainable managers here in the audience, and biggest key is that speaking to your audience piece. And when it comes to sustainability management plan, I can talk to Melissa about a future project, and she's like, "Yeah, 100%, go for it." Talk to Sarah, let's do solar at a general aviation. Duh, of course I'm into that. Not everyone's got that response. And a lot of the people that don't have that response are the people that are going to be working and maintaining potentially the system that you put in. And so if you're speaking to someone on maintenance about energy, it's really a good idea to speak in their language. And how is this going to help you? How can I help you as far as these goals go in the sustainable management plan to improve your life day to day? How can I get your buy-in? Same thing. I've got a guy in planning and development comes to me all the time, kind of jokingly. So what about the sustainability stuff? Really, do you really have to? And we've got an internal sustainability checklist that he has to adhere to. And one of the things I mentioned, I'm like, well, one of the big things we do is we encourage recycled concrete for a construction project. And he's like, well, yeah, that just makes common sense. It's just what you do. And I'm like, well, yeah, sustainability can be common sense. So when it comes to future sustainability strategy, leaning on that and leaning how to bring all the different departments in for this current sustainable management plan update that we're doing is key. And so we've got all different departments across the authority working on this. It's not just us three talking about 30% energy goal sounds good. No, it's the maintenance team that's coming up with that goal and how we're going to be able to achieve that. So getting everyone's buy-in, the fact that everyone's going to be part of this plan when it's all said and done and going to have their name on it is going to be very important for future success of the plan, future success of the program. And when it comes to trying to encourage things like the airlines, there's a little bit of a if you build it, they will come attitude. We want to embody sustainability so others start to see, oh, they value it. Maybe we should value it too. One thing we're looking into is, how do we encourage sustainable aviation fuel as far as the future here? Well, we know we're already talking about it internally, operationally, how we can receive that type of fuel, and the infrastructure's there. So what we're starting to tell people is if there's a company that comes that's able to blend it locally, we might have a market for it, and we're ready for it. And so we have to prepare almost in an innovation way of foreseeing the future, being ready, because all of this stuff is happening so fast that we are ready for the next step, and we're encouraging the next step, whether it's airlines, concessionaires, any partner at the airport. Okay, that's okay.
I think just to speak about that in terms of change management, the awareness factor, sustainable aviation fuel is out there. There may not be the desire yet, right, D, to participate, but you can arm people with the knowledge, with the ability, and have a plan in place to reinforce that so that you can focus on that barrier point, which is the desire, what's in it for them. So you don't have to not move forward because you haven't reached the next step, awareness, desire, knowledgeability, reinforcement. You can plan for all of those things, figure out where your barrier point is, focus your efforts there, and then you're ready to move forward.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation today. I want to talk a little bit, going back to what you were talking about, Mr. Kaplan, regarding the resiliency models that you guys did after Hurricane Ian. And I was just wondering if you could expand on what you're going to be doing in the future, going off of those resiliency models, and if you are kind of reaching out and talking to any other like Hillsborough entities, such as like Plan Hillsborough, in your plans for the future?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because it's kind of the part of the program I'm geeking out the most on right now. I hate to say it because it's kind of a big topic, but we were fortunate enough to already have updated our slosh modeling, is what it's called. And really, that's our storm surge inundation modeling. So the way that we look at it is Category 1 through Category 5 hurricane impacts, worst case scenario hitting the airport. And we've got them in degrees of 2020 level, 2050 level, which incorporates sea level rise, and 2100, which is much more heavy on the sea level rise. And fortunately, we were able to do that right before Hurricane Ian. So we had models ready. We had operations kind of looking at the models, figuring out how we're going to prepare. We realized we're really not prepared. We have a lot of assets all over the place that are critical for the operation of the airport. And I think we all have to, if we do have that hurricane, there's a good chance that commercially, airlines will be stopped for a particular period of time, but we then turn into, an emergency hub. This may be where supplies comes, and we have to make sure that we are up and being resilient. So we're looking at different things of protecting our assets first. We're considering two different ways of going about that, whether we are doing it asset-based, so whether we're figuring out flood walls around an electrical vault or a main terminal, or should we be looking at the full perimeter of our campus, right with the mouth of Tampa Bay? And how do we, what's the best plan of action as far as preparing this campus? We are definitely in talks with local partners. Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council just came up with their resiliency plan. We've been involved with that at the airport and all the different counties and cities. I've talked to City of Tampa quite a bit on their resiliency plan. We do work with the transportation authorities, and really we're kind of at the infancy of that, but we're having those conversations now, and we're talking to other airports because we can talk to other campuses, and we've got site visits for Water Street and Tampa General coming up that we're going to work with them and talk to them about. But there's really nothing like protecting an airport campus. We've got certain infrastructure that's just not common in other places, and we really need to figure out what they're doing. And oddly enough, across the country, there's maybe 10 that are even planning right now, and there's probably half of that have anything in place. And talk to like Boston Logan and LaGuardia and San Francisco and some of those leaders, but not a lot have really done anything. So we're really on the very beginning of that type of planning, but it's become kind of one of the most important things we're looking at now. Question,
I think from MS Teams folks, and then we can do some more interactive stuff later on. Question is, do you apply or consider to apply in the future biophilic design or increase indoor greeneries inside the airport terminals as part of your sustainability programs?
So yes, that is a discussion happening for Airside D. And we've got a good opportunity with Airside D because we're at the very beginning of everything, and it hasn't been really designed. We've been talking to our interior landscaping crew, who we think are going to be heavily involved with things like, living walls of plant life and things of that nature. We were talking about smart glass, yesterday. So there's a lot of options that we have for the development of Airside D. A little bit different when we're talking about retrofitting the entire rest of the airport. We already are pretty good in that. I mean, just talking about the plant life, all the plant life throughout the main terminal and the air sites already are live, which is pretty unique. Not all airports are that way. and about 80% are grown on site in our greenhouse. And that's just the thing I like to put. But we already have that focus, but Airside D is going to be our opportunity to be kind of world-class in that setting as far as installing, whether it be at vegetation, whether it be smart glass, whether it be most advanced lighting or HVAC systems, things of that nature.
A couple of years back, we did look at installing and retrofitting a live plant wall in the concessions area in the main terminal, and we found it to be expensive, mostly cost prohibitive. The maintenance side wasn't too bad, but if you look at the impact just to the environment of the one thing, it would be more of an Instagram moment than it would for any kind of real meaningful environmental impact. So cost prohibitive. We did look at it though, just didn't make sense for us at the time.
I will give a quick plug because there's been certain things looked at our GA airports. Now, this is not internal, this is more external environment. But when it comes to general aviation airports, we have more of an opportunity, I think, to be creative of what we might be able to do on that property. Got anything for that?
Have the same restrictions as the big airport as far as, FAA guidelines and all of that stuff. We are federally funded, so there are certain guidelines that we do have to follow, but they're just not as strict as the big airport. So, and we have a lot of land. We have a lot of open land out there. So there are things that we can think about using that land for. A lot of it, some of it can't be built on. So what can we do with it otherwise? We've talked about bees, and if any of you are coming on that tour, I'd like you all to kind of keep a wide open mind when you're looking at the space. And yeah, we're really open to that. And we'll talk about also some of the restrictions we do have and some of the opportunities with solar.
One thing to think about too, though, while we do have a lot of open space at our airports, the one thing that we don't care for are bird strikes, because that is a severe safety issue for all incoming aircraft and whatnot. So we have to be really mindful of our wildlife habitat, what we're creating, how are we managing that. We actually just had a new senior manager for wildlife come in recently, and she's phenomenal. So there's a program out, and I'm not going to remember what channel it's on, but they talk about what do we do for wildlife? How do we've got a hawk that we send out for rodents and whatnot. We use like firecrackers and fireworks cannons to scare the birds away as well. So there's some gopher tortoise issues that we deal with, but you have to be really, really mindful of the safety impact for any incoming or outgoing aircraft. So that's always a consideration, as well as balancing what can we do that's positive for the environment without impacting the safety of our passengers.
Well, let us thank our speakers. Give them a good round of applause. They kicked us off on our spring series, and obviously took a lot of time of their day to come here and talk to us, and hopefully that was beneficial to you. I'm sure they'll be here for a few more minutes. Feel free to interact with them. And we are having additional speakers come in the next few weeks. You will be seeing emails, Lauren, I'm sure, and I hope to see you at other events too. Thank you again for coming, and thank you all. Thank you all for your.